My friends used to text and say, hey, are you going to run today? Now it's shifted to, did you run, or when are you going to run today?
Yeah, very recently you ran the Boston Marathon. It's like the Super Bowl for runners, doing the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
I'm not naturally a super gifted athlete. Best I can do is just to not trip, hurt myself that way. I think I missed the cutoff that year by like 30 seconds or something, which just haunts you for so long.
And how'd you feel at the end?
Now what am I going to do?
Almost 10 years before you decided to go for it again. Have you ever done anything every day for 4 years in a row? I mean, think about it. Outside of probably sleep and maybe brushing your teeth, is there anything you've done every day for multiple years in a row? Today's guest on the Lead More podcast is Kelly Marshall. She is certainly a runner, but she's also a wife, a daughter, a mom, professional. And today I wanted to sit down with my friend Kelly to talk about her running streak. Today, as this episode records, it's something about 4 years running. 4 years running every day for 4 years. So every day, at least 1 mile. This morning, as she tells us, 20 miles. Kelly gets up and goes for a run. And you might know if you've watched the show, I'm obsessed with the idea of momentum. And so I sat down with Kelly today to ask her, like, how did this become a thing? When did it start? When did you know you were going to do it? When did it become a thing? And how now is there this feeling of inevitability? This momentum is behind her that every day she will run, I'm convinced, until the day that she can't. And so pretty powerful stuff. We break down, how did it start? How do you capture that momentum? What happens when you stop? Because spoiler alert, the streak ended at one point. You'll hear more about that. And then how did this passion for running lead to something much bigger than herself, which you might have heard me talk about, the 437 Project. So this is a run across the state of South Dakota. Kelly was there at the ground floor when this idea came to formation. And now 4 years in, it's a transformational project that's making a huge difference in the lives of South Dakotans and beyond. So that's our episode here with Kelly Marshall. Let's dive right in. Well, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So I have to start with an easy one. Have you gone for a run yet today?
I have gone for a run.
Okay,
yes.
A couple miles. What'd you go?
I actually did 20 miles. I did the bike trail loop, the whole thing today. I like to get that
20,
in.
that's
Yep.
What time were you running this morning?
Oh, I was running by 6.
Okay.
Which is kind of late for me.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
But you can knock out 20 in pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was warm this morning, so it took a little longer. A lot
Sure.
of water stops, but
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I jumped right into it because I want to talk to you about running today and specifically about the topic of momentum, because I think you have created this streak that has really, to me, defines momentum in many ways. And I want to know about how it's sort of defined your own life. So let's start at the beginning. Were you a high school athlete? Were you always a runner?
I was not. I did middle school track, I think, for a year.
Okay.
I did cheerleading and gymnastics in high school.
Yeah.
So
Chamberlain, right?
did not run. Yep. Grew up in Chamberlain.
And it wasn't until your 20s, 30s, when did you start running?
Yeah. So I really started running when I met my now husband.
Yeah.
He was training for his first marathon. So I was, early 20s, first job. And in order to try to keep up with him, I basically had to start running to spend time together.
Weren't you doing like distance or something like that? Or I can't remember the story.
Yeah. So I lived in Lincoln. He lived in Sioux Falls.
Okay.
So we would see each other on the weekends. But when you're training for a marathon, your weekend consists of a good chunk of hours spent running. So I was basically forced to either, spend time by myself or try to keep up with him.
Some good zone 2 cardio there because you can talk, right?
Right.
Some conversational
That's the goal. Yeah.
Working out. Okay. So you kind of like out of necessity become a runner, whether you identified as such or not. Mm-hmm. And maybe when would you have said that you when would you have called yourself a runner?
Oh, some days that's just, I still don't call myself a runner.
That's not fair.
But no, I think shortly that turned into, I decided to run a half marathon. And that, of course, is kind of like a slippery slope, turned into a couple. And then it was a marathon here and there. So I think it happens, for me at least, pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. And there's almost this identity shift that happens, I feel like, for folks who say, I feel like people do one of two things. They're like, I'm going to run a 5K or just to check a box, and then I'm never going to do that again.
Right.
But often it's the latter of like, this will be the first marathon I ever do. I'm never going to do another one. And then they get the bug, right?
Right.
And so you feel like you're that second category.
Yeah.
And give us the stats. What are we talking about now? How many marathons?
Ooh, well, I just finished my 14th marathon.
Okay.
I have no idea half marathons or other distances.
Sure.
I don't really keep track of those anymore. So I've done, 14 full marathons. I've done a couple of ultras, several relay style races.
Cool. And the goal, what's the, was it the 6 global ones?
Yeah. So working on the Abbott Marathon Majors 6 stars. So I have 4 of those completed, a couple more to go.
And what's left?
So I have Berlin and Tokyo left to go.
Wow, cool. All right, so those are like the break. Well, let's do one more stat. So you have this streak, and that's what we're going to talk about. Basically, a streak of every day running at least 1 mile for how long? Do you know?
Today was day 1,200 something, 50 something.
So we'll call it roughly 4 years.
Right. It started in November of 21. I started the streak.
Okay, dang.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it. Some consistency, which I admire, because I think often when it comes to success and leadership, we are looking for people who come with, we think that it's like some form of luck, some form of like superpower skill that like they have that we don't have. There's always a lot of reasons why that person has it and I will never have that. And I just think a big part of it is showing up every day. And so let's talk about that. So you show up every day, at least 1 mile, usually more, today 20.
Yep.
So you're still going to run tomorrow despite being sore or however much, what you did today. What have you found that this streak has done for you? How do you think it's changed you?
I think it makes me accountable. So if I accomplish nothing else in the day, I want to make sure that I've done that I show up, that I show up for myself, that I do what I say I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, really some of those days where you feel like, nothing good happened today, or I didn't accomplish anything today. I know I'm going to accomplish that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're not just a runner, you're a professional, you're a wife, a mom, all the other labels that you claim. So I'm guessing it translates to those aspects of your life as well.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm a fairly disciplined person, so I like to check the boxes.
Yeah.
I like to do the things that I say I'm going to do. Yep. So it's a matter of prioritizing too, that if I prioritize my run and myself and my mental and physical health, then that makes me show up better for all of those other roles too.
Cool. So when I think about momentum, I start by saying like you have some sort of potential, and whether you realize it or not, you started because you wanted to run with your now husband, but you clearly showed that like you were capable of doing hard things. Then you chose a path, which you didn't realize that you were probably on it at first, but became this like path of running every day. But then I think we start to have some form of pace, which I call like essentially velocity, because then running, you probably got good at running. You became a runner and then became a good runner. And that's when the marathons and other things happen. And then lastly, I say when you have your path and your pace, you go after a prize. So what do you think is like, because this is one of those like infinite games, like now you're committed. Mm-hmm. Like what's the prize? What's the finish line as a runner? Or is there one?
I don't know if there is a finish line. I think about running, like you said, how I want to show up, and I want to set that example. I want to do it for myself, but I want to do it for my kids too. Yeah. And I want them to develop those healthy habits. Yep. I want to do it for my friends and the rest of my family. Yeah. And I don't know that there is a finish line. Ideally, I would keep the running streak as long as I can.
Yeah, I love that idea. So like Simon Sinek calls it the infinite game, right? You're just, there is no finish line. You just keep going. Yep. And I'm guessing your kids are at the point now they run with you, or they have, maybe reluctantly.
Yep.
But so you feel like that's been modeled, or they've certainly seen their mother commit to this hard task.
Yeah. So this, my boys in particular, super competitive, especially with each other. Both
Wonder
like to
where they
run.
Get that from.
I know, it's a mystery. My daughter is not much of a runner, went out for track this year. So it's really fun to see them try something and I think have the confidence that they want to try it and they want to do it.
Yeah. Well, I love this idea of like modeling first, right? So like you talked about how you've built a community around this passion, one for your family, but two, what is the Sioux Falls Women's Run, right? Mm-hmm. You have a group, or just like a group of, that's not maybe the official group, but.
Yeah. So Sioux Falls Women Run began, oh my goodness, probably more than 10 years ago at this point. And I was part of that sort of initial group which really just tried to build a women's running community in Sioux
Yeah.
Falls, which continues to grow. It's fun to see something like that grow, and then you can walk away and it still exists.
Yeah. And then your social group too of friends and then of course the 437 project. So I want to talk about that. I've done this. I've talked about it on the show before because I've been lucky enough to participate. You were there though when it became just like a kernel of an idea. Yeah. So talk about like the origin of the 437 project.
Yeah. So the 437 project started in 2022 as just sort of this brainchild of Mayor Tenhaken, a few of us in a room talking about sort of runner pipe dreams, right? Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if? Yeah. And you kind of like start building just like you end up signing up for your first half marathon and marathon, and it'd be really cool to run across the state. And what do we do and how do we do this? And you know, it shifted from something where we have a bunch of people in a room and let's just get in some vans and, you know, like relay style across the state to this massive group and project and much more manpower and logistics than we would have ever imagined. Yeah. So that too, you know, it's really cool to see something go from this idea, truly make it come to life, and then be able to hand it off and have other people participate, get excited. Yeah.
And point it toward a cause, right? So like it started with like a lot of things do. What if we could? Right. Do you think we could? And so talk about the cause, because I know that's close to your heart as well.
Yeah. So the initial goal was always to have it tie to mental and physical health, tie those two together. Mm-hmm. We were just coming out of COVID, and lots of people were, I think, investing maybe more in their physical health because they had the time, but not necessarily linking the two. And the group of us also felt pretty strongly about that. During COVID, I personally ran my highest mileage week ever of my whole life just because I could. Yeah, and you know, you have the time and you're going stir crazy anyway. So let's see what we're capable of.
It was emotionally challenging. There was a lot of concern and worry, and going for a run was something you could control.
Yeah. So I think it was really just being able to talk about that on a larger scale, bigger platform, you know, to say all of us understand that connection and we do it in probably one way or another. Yep. And it's okay. And everybody else should feel like it's okay too.
Yeah. So you guys all experienced this. Mayor Paul saw it firsthand from the city standpoint in terms of mental health and suicide. And so it seemed like a good match, this physical, mental match. How have you seen, so you were there at the beginning, first year. I got to run the second and third year. This year it'll be the fourth year. So now we're talking 40 plus runners. The money goes up every year in terms of dollars raised. Since you've been there from the beginning, how have you seen this thing grow and what it's become?
I think just the recognition, you know, we've really tried to build this brand and tie it back to the mental health piece. Mm-hmm. And for me, you know, walking into Hy-Vee one day and seeing somebody that I don't know wearing a 437 project hat, and pretty you cool. realize it's kind of become something bigger than just you at this point.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And that to me is momentum, right? So it's like, what if we could do this was the potential. And then we decided we're going to go across the state was our path. And then by doing it over and over and keep showing up, you create pace. And now this prize is that the statewide brand raises hundreds of thousands of dollars for an awesome cause. And people are like barreling down the door to try to want to run this now. And before the first year, you probably couldn't even find 12 people to do it. Like you had to find 12 people crazy enough to do this project.
Yes. Yeah. We certainly started as kind of pulling teeth, like who could we call on? Who do we tap that can raise the money, that can run the miles? Yeah. And it was kind of a difficult ask at times. Yeah. And shift to this year, you know, we've had to go through an actual application process. We've had a committee that helps decide who those runners selected will be. Yep. So yeah, huge momentum.
There's so much to like, we can apply that to so many things, business, personal life. Like when something is a dream, it's a lot harder to get people on board for something. And then you see it and it's a reality. Yeah. And now everyone's like, how can I help? How can I participate? Yeah. I just think it's so cool and the cause is so great. So I'm glad that you guys started it. I'm curious on the streak, give us a story of like the day you thought maybe you might lose it. There's gotta be something, a couple maybe.
Well, sort of a spoiler alert here. I had a streak. The year that I turned 40, I wanted to do a running streak. And my goal was to run a mile outside every day
For that year. Okay.
When I hit that 365, I decided to keep going. A week or two after that, I was not feeling great and decided I was just going to like bag the streak.
Yeah.
So fast forward, almost immediate regret, right? Because once you do it, you can't undo it. Like the day has passed.
Yep.
And so I knew that I didn't love that I had done that. And so when I decided to pick it up again, I knew that it was basically going to be, there aren't a lot of outs here.
Yeah.
And that includes, you know, days after a marathon are probably the hardest, especially particularly downhill marathon, really
physically,
hard.
just
like
the body
physically
toll.
very difficult. You don't want to run. You just want to rest.
Yeah.
And you know that you look like a very injured person trying to like hammer out one single mile at a very slow pace.
Sure.
So those are hard physically.
But this isn't just like a word of honor type of thing. Like you're probably tracking all these on Strava. Like there's data out there. There's accountability.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
yeah. I mean, there's that. I write it in, I have a paper copy of my running journal. So I still keep track in there too.
And is that with like notes of how you felt or just 1 mile, December
Depends
5th?
on the day. Yeah. Notes of how I felt, maybe who I ran with or if I did a workout or what shoes I wore. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. So I want to go back to the feeling of losing the streak. When did it? So this I get the 40th idea. Like I'm turning 40. Here's my goal. How did you feel that day? Was it just one day, or how much regret or indecision or uncertainty? How long did you sit with that?
Yeah. So it wasn't just one day that I took off. I mean, after that, then I was a little more intermittent, right? Because I had disrupted the streak. So it was kind of like, well, it doesn't matter now.
Yep.
But that day, you know, I just wasn't willing to probably work through physically how I felt, that it wasn't worth it to me at that point. And in retrospect, it's 365 days. And now that I'm at 1,200 days, it looks different to me. You know, I am much more careful, I would say, to try to preserve that than I would have then to just take it or leave it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to be said for that power of that momentum of once you're on the path to just never stop. What other maybe life impacts? I'm guessing you are very healthy. Like you probably don't get sick very often.
Yeah.
It's forced you to plan your day and really schedule out your priorities. What else have you noticed?
I mean, the priority thing is huge. My mom has always said that to me, that if something's your priority, you'll figure out how to make it work. And so that to me is something, it's probably a little annoying to my family at this point because, you know, traveling or different things like that, it's tough sometimes. Yeah. It's, you know, we've been on a boat in Alaska and I'm like, can you just take me to shore so I can run my mile? And everybody's annoyed at Kelly's running streak.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it really does force you to sort of prioritize, and that's my priority.
Yep. And I'm guessing your husband's long since asked if you're going to run. Like he already knows.
Yeah, nobody asks. You know, at one point, my friends used to text and say, hey, are you going to run today? Or now it's shifted to, did you run? Or when are you going to run today? Yeah. Not if, but when.
Yeah. So it literally became if to win. Yeah. I'm sure now it's like 3 p.m. and someone's texting like, is everything okay?
Yeah,
like,
right?
You haven't run yet?
I didn't see you on Strava.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay, let's go to very recently. You ran the Boston Marathon.
Yes.
And I appreciated that you shared a little post on what it meant to you. I think I was vulnerable for you, which is good. Yeah. I know that can be hard. Talk to me about that experience, because that was obviously probably one of it's like the Super Bowl for runners doing the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, Boston for me was a really long time coming. So I'm not naturally a super gifted athlete. I mean, I always joke that I run because I'm not good at anything else. I'm not coordinated. I'm not good at ball sports. So I just run. And the best I can do is just to not trip and, you know, hurt myself that way. So I first started to think about Boston a little bit, probably after my second or third marathon, where I was starting to get close with, like you said, you know, right. Not really trying. I was kind of getting the getting closer.
Yeah.
And I thought this could be within the realm of possibility.
Yep.
So I did qualify my first time for Boston in 2015. And for people who are familiar with how the weird Boston math works, there is a cutoff time. It's not just a simple, like, you run this time and you get to run the Boston Marathon. There's more applicants than there are spots. And so they've since implemented
It's kind of a moving target, isn't it?
Yes, a moving target, anywhere from 0 minutes to 7+ minutes that you would need to run faster than your standard for your age and gender. And so
you got to beat it with some cushion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so my cushion from that 2015 race wasn't big enough. I didn't get in. I think I missed the cutoff that year by like 30 seconds or something.
Ouch.
Which just haunts you for so long.
I bet. Yeah.
To think about, like, what could I have done differently?
Yep.
And what
if I would have ran a few more miles?
Like, what am I going to do?
Or,
Right.
Yep.
But really, like, I can't change it.
Yep. It's past.
So you dwell on that for a little bit, but then now what am I going to do? Because I know what I need to do, and I know that's still what I want.
Yep.
And so really it just drove kind of that forward shift to say, how am I going to do this again, but better?
Okay. So it was almost 10 years before you decided to go for it again?
So I had a couple of attempts in there. And again, like, for me, the stars have to kind of align, that it has to be a decent day. I have to have a pretty decent training cycle. Can't be super hot, can't be super windy, can't be a super ridiculously hilly course or something that's going to test me in lots of different ways.
Yep.
So it took a little while for the stars to align again. And then my qualifier was in 2023.
Okay. You have to wait. It's like for the year ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So Boston works kind of a little ways ahead.
Okay.
So yeah, my 2023 race qualified me for the 2025 Boston.
Okay. And tell us about race day, because this was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. It was a beautiful day. So when people say it's a beautiful day, that usually means it's not ideal running conditions, but it was a little warm.
Wait, what do you mean?
But really,
so what's like?
I mean, it was like
they would
60,
say ideal day if it were an ideal day. Otherwise, they say it's a beautiful.
It's a great day to spectate a marathon. It's not necessarily a great day to run a marathon.
Too hot.
So a little warm. It was sunny, which again, coming out of winter training in South Dakota to run
you probably
a race
prefer
in April,
overcast or a little cooler.
I could have taken a little cooler, but I told myself for almost a decade that once I got to run Boston, I wasn't going to complain about it. So tried to stifle my complaints about that. So,
inner voice there.
Yeah, inner voice. A lot of mental dialogue going on. But it really was a beautiful day. The course is amazing. The crowd is amazing. Spent a lot of time just taking in everything. It's such an iconic race, and it's just, to be there is pretty cool.
Yeah. And how'd you feel at the end?
It feels a little surreal, honestly, because, like you said, this is the prize, really. Like, for me, this always is the Super Bowl of running.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm on the starting line, it's always something that's an event that is of interest. And
Absolutely.
so I've spent a lot of time working towards this, thinking about it, thinking about the race. And then you're turning right on Hereford and left on Boylston, and pretty soon you're under the finish line and you're like, it's all over.
Yeah. How'd you feel?
Yeah. I think it's almost just like an out of body experience, right?
Yeah.
That you're floating down this street and mounds and mounds of people are cheering for you. And I had no headphones, no anything. I just wanted to take in the race. So you hear it all. And it's super emotional. I spent lots of time crying during the race off and on.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
I expected that, but I wanted to just show up for all of it.
That's amazing. So we already know that you ran the next day because the streak is still alive. But I do want to know, like, you hear athletes in the Super Bowl and they win. And, that's why I always kind of knew I was just a high school athlete and not to get to a pro, I think you also need some physical God-given gifts. But even college athletes have a different level of intensity. And, they're like, when is practice start the next, like they're just on to the next thing. So if this is such a prize, how do you rebound from that when it feels like box check? I know you're a box checker. Mm-hmm. So then what?
I think it turns into a couple things. One is I didn't have my best race day at Boston. And so my first thought is I need to do that again. because I didn't show up the way I wanted to. And it wasn't necessarily anything I could control, but I want to do it again.
Yeah.
I want to know that I had my best on that day on that course.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
Yep.
It's always a challenge for me anyway, following any race, to not just start to think about what's next.
Yeah.
Because it is, that race, no matter what it is, when I finish my 6-star for the majors, it'll still be what's next. It's maybe not my next star, but it's still what's the next race or adventure or destination location.
Yeah. I'm going to probably sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but I think there's a couple lessons of like, how do we celebrate the wins? Like actually pause and reflect that you've ran the Boston Marathon, or that you will eventually get your 6-star because it's inevitable. So enjoying that, but also like, I think a lot of times greatness is really misunderstood by people. And so like, that's crazy. Or like, how could you win the Super Bowl and then immediately go to the weight room the next day? And I just think that's what excellence looks like, right? That's the people who are at the top of their game, who know what it takes to get to that level and then sustain it. And I know that you're not like, you're not trying to get like Olympic qualifying times, but you have high standards for yourself. And I think that's awesome. I'm sure that people are like, why don't you take a day off?
Right.
Why don't you rest?
Yeah.
I'm sure you get that often.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how do you, is it just like one in one ear, one in out, or how do you react to that?
For me, rest is maybe not taking a day off from running, but running a slow, easy mile, or while my kids bike with me, or I take my dog for a run, or I run, I don't care about my pace. I don't really care about where I go. That's still rest to me. 10 minutes of minor activity is pretty minimal in my opinion.
Yeah.
So as opposed to spending, hours running 20 miles, still feels pretty restful to me to just get 10-ish minutes of activity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's lessons there as well, right? Like everyone has their own version of what that is. But as you said, becoming the person who says what you're going to do. This is something that matters not just to you, but also it impacts other people beyond you, friends, kids. I just think it's really cool. So I didn't prep you on this one, but I often ask in the podcast at the end what people's superpower is. And I define that as like the thing you do better than everyone else. I have an idea, but I want to hear your answer. What do you think your superpower is?
I don't know if this is a superpower by definition. I think just showing up.
Yeah. I was going to say discipline.
Yeah.
Showing up. Yeah. And I'm guessing that you've seen that translate in lots of areas of your life.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for inspiring so many, but with your own streak and sharing it. I think that's a big part of it too, is like you have to share it with the world too. And I know there's a lot of feelings of like, nobody cares. But you care. And I think often more people care than you realize. And then pointing this, potential and this momentum toward a cause like the 437 Project, like it's one of those things that I view as an alumni now of like, I already know, I don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years, but I know it's going to be awesome. So I'm just excited for that, like watching something grow and balloon from just this little idea. So thanks for all you do, Kelly.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. That was our episode with Kelly Marshall. Thanks, Kelly, for being here today. And thank you for listening to the Lead More podcast. Reminder, you can go listen and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. So we got Apple, we got Spotify, but we also do it in video format if you're watching right now. So go to YouTube as well, youtube.com/JohnTMeyer_. And you can subscribe not only for the Lead More podcast, but I do my weekly YouTube show about business, about personal development, and how to grow and become the best version of yourself. So as always, friends, take care and be well.